So, what happens when a professional's private opinions go public in a really big way? We're about to look at what went down in Florida, where two healthcare workers made social media posts that sparked a massive firestorm. And it didn't just cost them their jobs, it really shook the foundation of trust in their entire profession. It all kicked off with this post right here. This is from Eric Martindale, a registered nurse in Florida. He put this statement out there on multiple social media sites, basically drawing a political line in the sand. Now, in a job that's built on providing care to anyone and everyone, this wasn't just seen as a controversial take, it was a direct challenge to the very ethics of nursing. And, this one post set off an immediate chain reaction. You can almost break it down into three parts. You have the post itself, then the professional oath it was seen as breaking, and finally, the swift career-ending consequence that followed. Now, this post didn't just stay within his circle of friends. Nope. It got picked up by really influential accounts like Libs of TikTok, who blasted it out with this caption. And that share, it was like throwing a match on dry tinder. The public backlash was instant, and it was huge. See, at the very heart of all this outrage was the American Nurses Association Code of Ethics. And you have to understand, this isn't just a suggestion, it is a core rule. It says that nurses have to provide care without any bias. So to a lot of people, Martindale's post looked like he was just completely rejecting that sacred professional duty. So what was Martindale's explanation? Well, his defense was that his accounts were hacked. The thing is, the post showed up on his Facebook, his Instagram, and his Threads account all around the same time, so that explanation was met with a whole lot of skepticism online. But here's where it gets even crazier. This wasn't some isolated incident. It turns out that just a few days before Martindale's post blew up, a really similar situation had already happened in the very same state, and this started to look like a pattern to officials. The second case involved another Florida nurse named Lexi Lawler. Now, the details were a little different. While Martindale said he'd withhold care, Lawler posted a really graphic video where she was actively wishing harm on a pregnant political figure. So, different actions, but both were seen as crossing that same ethical line, and they ended up with almost identical consequences. The public reaction to both of these cases was just immense, and it was all fueled by the crazy engine of social media. To really get why officials and employers acted so fast, you have to appreciate just how massive the online attention really was. Just to put this into perspective for you, the post that exposed Nurse Lexi Lawler's video, it didn't just get a little bit of traction. It racked up over 8 million views. That is a staggering number of eyeballs, all focused on the actions of one local nurse. And people weren't just passively watching. That same post got over 43,000 likes. Every single one of those clicks was another person weighing in, amplifying the calls for action, and putting a ton of pressure on her employer and on state regulators. Okay, so with that level of viral heat, you can bet the response from employers and state officials was going to be fast and decisive. There was no let's wait and see what happens here. Not at all. For Lexi Lawler, the consequences at work were immediate. Her employer, Baptist Health, put out this statement pretty much right away. They made it crystal clear her comments didn't reflect their values and confirmed she was, quote, no longer employed by our health system. The state's reaction to Eric Martindale's post was just as quick and just as blunt. Florida's Attorney General James Uthmere announced publicly that as of that day, Martindale was no longer a registered nurse in the state, and he stressed they have zero tolerance for this kind of thing. So for both Eric Martindale and Lexi Lawler, the bottom line was the same. After the firings, after the public outcry, both of them had their Florida nursing licenses revoked. That effectively ended their nursing careers in the state. These two stories really go way beyond just a couple of angry social media posts. They force us to have a much bigger, much more complicated conversation about where personal beliefs, professional ethics, and the law all crash into each other, especially in a field like healthcare. At the very core of medicine, you have the Hippocratic Oath. We all know the summary: do no harm. It's this fundamental promise that healthcare has to be apolitical. And a lot of people were arguing that in this digital age, making statements like these is a new kind of harm. It's one that chips away at that sacred trust between all patients and their doctors and nurses. So if there's one message to take away from the swift actions by the employers and by Florida's Attorney General, it's this. The state wanted to make it unmistakably clear that it has a zero-tolerance policy when healthcare professionals let political bias interfere with their duty to care for people. And all of this brings us to the really tough question at the heart of this whole story, and it's one that goes way beyond just nursing. In an age where everything we post online can live forever, where exactly do we draw the line between our right to say what we think and our professional duty to serve everyone, no matter who they are? Just so you know, this explainer was based on some really comprehensive reporting by the Shasta Beacon. If you want to take a deeper dive into the story, you can check out their work directly.